Hey guys, Omni here. We are back for our final breakdown for Obi-Wan Kenobi as the finale aired this week. And if you haven't seen my reaction to it, go check it out. The episode is wild. And I can't wait to see what Eric has been able to glean from his perception into the Force to allow us to find these Easter eggs and hidden details and homages that maybe went over our heads in the heat of the battle that we were witnessing on our screens. But guys, we're going to go ahead and jump into this. So if you're not subscribed to New Rockstars, man, what are you even doing? Go like their video, go check it out, subscribe if you're not, and let's dive in.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 6, the finale, which reveals that that second set of footprints in the sand really belonged to your old teacher who saw everything you've been doing alone in your cave. Let's break down this episode shot by shot for all the Star Wars Easter eggs and details you missed. Quick announcement, you can see New Rockstars live in Austin, Texas on Saturday, July 2nd as part of RTX, Rooster Teeth's podcast festival. For discounted tickets, click the link in the description and use the code New Rockstars, all one word. It's gonna be a
way
lot
too
of
far
fun.
for
I
me.
hope to see you there. We open on Tatooine, passing some locals, including some Jawas, a guy carrying a sack of what looks like thin Melaroon fruits, a way too clean astromech droid, and then a line for water at a portable evaporator cart. Boba Fett reminded us how water is a price-inflated commodity on this planet, and the vendor of it would of course know Owen Lars. As a moisture farmer, Owen would be his supplier. But the guy who cuts in line is Groff Ditcher, the foreman from Obi-Wan's meat slicing gig in episode 1, where he uses the Force to swat the cup out of his hand, spilling water, a shocking, wasteful display, but also showing how uninterested Reva is in her own current health. She is on a suicide mission. Whereas before Reva and the other Inquisitors announced their presence, here Reva is hooded, a bandage wrapped around her wounded midsection, and with her hair fluttering in her eyes, she's looking rough. Roken's Freighter does some zigzag maneuvering.
I like tattered Reva. I think she actually looks pretty good like that.
The opening chase of the Tantive 4 in A New Hope, by the way, it was not yet named the Tantive 4 in the 1977 film. It was later named that. You can follow Pablo Hidalgo's amazing Twitter where he goes into the history of all of that. But yes, the imagery is awesome. It starts with the diamond-shaped hull slicing up through the screen until our perspective glides through the overhanging bridge tower, just dizzying us with the sense of scale of this floating fortress, pursuing this, by comparison, tiny, tiny fugitive ship. Roken reassures the refugees,
"We'll head for Tessin. Get you out from there."
Yeah, Tessin is not an established planet in Star Wars.
Yeah, it's not one I'm aware of.
A planet and it's not already in lore. Underscoring this is even more.
The galaxy's huge, man.
Like Obi-Wan's face reads like, yeah, there's no Tessin in Star Wars. Why are you lying? Leia uses.
He would know about missing planets after getting roasted. I ain't falling for this again.
Lola to comfort Corran and his mother. Remember Corran possibly being a nod to Corran Horn, Legends character and son to Jedi Valen Halcyon, whose name appeared on the Orabesh on Jabim and Mapuzo. Luke and Owen peruse a parts shop where Owen is warned by his water vendor. They head home and Beru reveals herself to be more of a survivalist than we ever imagined.
Yeah, man. Hell yeah.
She'll come when the suns go down. Best we get positioned now.
Dude, like, I mentioned this in my review, but, you know, this kind of added a little bit of perspective to why it was like, because they're just little farmers, right? That's all we thought in A New Hope, right? So, like, why did the Empire stormtroopers, no less, go out of their way to disintegrate the bodies? You know, burn them alive like that? Dude, they probably, like, once they knew they were there and, like, Luke could be in danger and they were after these droids or whatever, they probably gave them a hard time.
So, in the years since Anakin's visit and Attack of the Clones and Obi-Wan returning with a baby in Revenge of the Sith, Beru thought, yeah, shotgun behind a flower pot. That sounds good. We don't need to tell Owen about this. I bet she also hides thermal detonators in the blue milk. Obi-Wan gifts Leia Tala's blaster holster with the notches for every Jedi she saved. Leia runs her finger over these, the last of which Tala would have carved in for Leia. Obi-Wan inspects his lightsaber and says this little prayer.
Obi-Wan, I think, has my favorite lightsaber.
Whether he dies or I do, this ends today.
Yes, no response for Qui-Gon, but we learned at the end of the episode Qui-Gon was there. Obi-Wan cannot yet sense him because he still needs some closure with Anakin. Obi-Wan tells Roken,
"There are not many leaders left. People follow you. Don't stop."
Just getting started.
Setting up Roken, it sounds like to help future other Jedi runaways in a possible second season, or maybe on shows like Andor or Ahsoka, because
or even Bad Batch as a voice, depending on how far away that show eventually gets.
My lord, we must continue our pursuit of the insurgents. Now is our
Before somebody says it in the comments, I know it's like right at the beginning of the Empire. We don't know necessarily when season 2 takes place. I'm just saying, like, eventually if they get to that point and maybe they go on to season 3, 4, 5, whatever, maybe they will run into Rogan. Or maybe they'll run into a younger Rogan. How he starts the path. Who knows? Maybe the Bad Batch helps him start the path. I know somebody's going to comment on that. Anyway, back to the video.
Wipe out this network in its entirety. We cannot prioritize one lone Jedi.
Follow Kenobi.
At once, Lord Vader.
Yes, the Grand Inquisitor bites his tongue. But the Charles Soule 2017 comics give us some deeper context to the rivalry between these two characters. Vader hates the Inquisitors almost as much as he hates the Jedi. Hatred is really the fuel that keeps this whole operation running. Owen warns Luke.
The Tuskens are on the hunt again. They're raiding farms along the waste.
Oh, come on. Didn't we just learn from Boba Fett that Tuskens are not the barbaric raiders that people think they are? I mean, I'm not surprised at Owen's prejudice.
Remember, though, that tribe said that they were the non-violent tribe.
Just saying, those moisture farmers were on stolen land. Obi-Wan lures Vader to this rocky moon.
Yeah.
Now, this moon is not identified. The audio description calls it a desolate moon or a barren moon. But its terrain does look a bit like the rocky surface of Obadiah, home world of the Pikes, but this is definitely not Obadiah. Okay,
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Obi-Wan finds Lola in one of his pockets. He joked earlier with Leia that he should borrow the droid to be less afraid, and when Leia hugged him earlier, there was a lump on her back where Lola was probably tucked, and she must have dropped it in his pocket then. Remember, this is the same move that she used on her mother to snatch Lola in episode 1. Vader arrives in his Lambda-class shuttle, and he finds Obi-Wan waiting for him in front of the rocky monoliths. Now, Vader, by comparison, is flanked only by a misty void, and his shuttle wings folded upward to evoke the shape of a pitchfork. So the monoliths behind Obi-Wan provide a nice compositional contrast. Obi-Wan is facing Vader with backup of countless fallen Jedi, standing shoulder to shoulder with him, whereas Vader is facing Obi-Wan alone. In the distant profile shot, Vader approaches him under this crescent, but it's not a crescent moon. We're on a moon right now. That is the planet that this moon orbits. This now framed above Vader, and based on the shadow of that planet's surface and the lighting of this moon, we must be on the dark side of this moon. All the imagery here also reminding us of the eclipse that suddenly formed on Mustafar over Obi-Wan's head as he and Anakin began their duel. So we got one shot making Obi-Wan look
I
less
never
alone,
noticed there was an
another shot
eclipse
reminding us
happening in that
we
shot.
are in the dark side with Vader still. Vader asks,
Have you come to destroy me, Obi-Wan?
I will do what I must.
Then you will die.
yes,
Instead
paralleling
of you
their
will
pre-duel
try.
exchange in Revenge of the Sith.
I will do what I must.
You will try.
Then Obi-Wan strikes this same aggressive pose that he did with Grievous in Revenge of the Sith and against Maul in Rebels. I love that pose. And compared to their past duel, Obi-Wan is far more confident now. At one point,
And
they are
aggressive.
back as they were in their sparring
Not
session
as
flashback
defensive
last
as he
episode.
usually
Meanwhile,
is.
at the Lars homestead, Reva ignites her lightsaber as a torch to see her surroundings, which Obi-Wan showed us in episode 3, ultimately just blinds you to the threats lurking in. Obi-Wan and Beru open fire, kicking over those flower pots that we saw lining the homestead in the opening act of A New Hope. You know how much water these plants need? You know how valuable water is? It's just crazy to think that this home was gonna
That is
wreck
kinda
like
interesting
this.
to think
This shootout
about.
happening in the same place where Luke was hopping around in the opening act of A New Hope, and no one brought it up. And while I'm editorializing here, a quick reminder that the best way to support New Rockstars is to get our Kenobi-inspired Empire's Most Wanted shirt at newrockstarsmerch.com. You'll get the added option to write in a custom shout out for our WikiLeaks after shows. Thank you. Anyway, as we return to Vader and Obi-Wan, we get this roving shot gliding through the rocky pillars, just giving us a sense of the natural elements that we'll be able to use in this fight, and how those rocks are as much a threat to them as their blades are. Obi-Wan tries to collapse one of these pillars on Vader, but Vader casts it aside, and then Vader jabs him in the nose. And our heart skips a beat here, because along with the choir voices under this battle, it all evokes Phantom Menace. Remember, this is a move Maul did to Qui-Gon to knock the saber
yeah.
from his hands and then stab him in the chest. Remember the one time in Star Wars someone has actually died from stabbing?
Okay, I wanna hop in on this because I've seen so many people like bring that up. There are two separate philosophies at force here, like a go. The Jedi don't cling to this world, especially one like Qui-Gon. Clinging to life is not in their code. Death is freeing, you know, and he knows this. You know, he's not going to cling to life. We've seen Maul cut in half, completely disemboweled. We've seen Anakin delimbed, burned, lungs scarred. Keeps going. This isn't new. This isn't unheard of. And the thing is, all these survivors, Reva included, are drawing from the dark side. Something that prolongs life, artificially drags it out, and allows them to stay grounded and rooted where they are through their pain, their anger, their anguish, their torment. And Palpatine survived that way, Maul survived that way, Vader survived that way. Hell, Finnick managed to survive being shot point blank in the stomach. I mean, it's not magical at this. I mean, well, it is magical, but it's not absurd. And the comparison to Qui-Gon is just a large gap in understanding the philosophy of him versus any other character. And in we go.
Then does a Vader quake, crumbling the ground beneath Obi-Wan's feet, submerging him into a sinkhole. Finally, Vader has the high ground now.
I wish you would have said something about it, though.
The hole that Owen jabs at Reva is actually the same piece of scrap that Han, Leia, Luke, and Chewie tries to use to brace the walls of the trash compactor in A New Hope. This prop also showed up in Pelimoto's shop in Boba Fett.
I remember it there, but
her wound, remembering that the last time they spoke in Episode 1, she did not have this bandage around her midsection, so he knows she's probably weak there. Reva throws him off the walkway.
Owen goes hard, man.
His knee, he clutches it from the ground there. He walks with a limp for the rest of this episode, setting up Uncle Owen's tired gait in A New Hope. As Luke flees across the desert, there is a faint red glow. I think it's just one of the moisture evaporators behind him, but it does have a scary, sinister presence.
I don't know, I assumed that was Reva.
Meanwhile, beneath the rubble, Obi-Wan holds up the rocks, haunted by voices.
I hope he touches on this.
Those are the overlapping voices of Anakin and Darth Vader. Anakin from their Episode 5 sparring session, Vader from Episode 3, Anakin's ranting before their duel in Revenge of the Sith, but Obi-Wan is able to silence these painful voices and replace them with visual flashes of hope. Leia on Jabim, Luke outside his home, Leia on Mapuzo, Leia getting her green cloak on Daiyu, Leia's fall from Daiyu where Obi-Wan first reconnected with the Force, Luke pretending to be a pilot wearing the pod racer goggles, Leia holding his hand as they left Nur. These are representations of the living Force, empowering Obi-Wan to free himself from his grave. And Vader thinking
okay, he didn't. So all those voices and the physical rocks crushing in around him was a visual representation of everything he's been feeling up until this point. The weight of the failure of Anakin, the weight of the death of his friend, the weight of the loss of the Jedi. And he's hearing echoes of every single one of those moments that is accentuating this physical battle he's now struggling with. He is in his last-ditch effort to finally not collapse under the weight of all of that pressure, all of that guilt, all of that pain, until all the sound goes away and he hones in to silence, clearing his head, and then he thinks on the things that he needs to protect now, what is important now, the things that he needs to, his purpose. You know, that he's more than just his failures at this point, and he garners that strength to push through. And it was just like, it was poetry in motion, man.
He's one, suddenly stops, sensing the threat behind him. Similar framing as last episode when Reva snuck up behind him, his own mask and helmet blocking out most of the frame. In Episode 3, it was Vader who got the drop on Obi-Wan. Now the tables have turned. Obi-Wan switches his saber from one hand to the other behind his back, and then he does that behind the back twirl that Anakin used to love to do. We saw him do it in the sparring flashback last episode, also in the prequels. Obi-Wan is straight up rubbing this in Vader's face now. He's trying to awaken Anakin's soul within him.
Again, not on the defensive.
To crumble the ground beneath Obi-Wan's feet, a downward assault. Obi-Wan raises the rocks to hurl them, an upward assault, more befitting of a Jedi who traditionally raise rocks as part of their basic training. Luke on Dagobah, Grogu on Corvus, Rey on Crate, even Roken alluded to floating rocks back in Episode 4.
So does every kid making a rock float from here to Coruscant.
Obi-Wan hits Vader in the helmet with an elbow jab.
On top of that, like being like, and I mentioned this in my reaction as well, it reminded me, and I'm happy too, because I watched Blind Wave's reaction. Aaron caught on to it as well, made the parallel. It's like, it reminded me so much of the Consular Jedi move in SWTOR that they use, except just on a much, much larger scale, because it is one of their moves.
Always the punch punches that just take these guys down, and this staggers Vader enough for Obi-Wan to give him the business, hacking away at his control panel. Yet Vader refuses to yield.
Yeah,
Obi-Wan
he, like,
slashes his back and
goes
then kicks
Anakin
off
on
the
Anakin,
holder
man.
for a leaping strike like Achilles in Troy, slicing Vader's helmet open and exposing his scarred face. You can even see the scarring at the top of his bald head.
Anakin. Anakin's gone.
The sound design here.
I am what remains.
I love it. We hear a mix of Hayden Christensen's voice in a distorted mess, along with the recreated re-speecher version of James Earl Jones' vocal likeness. Two identities living in one. This whole moment parallels one of the most heartbreaking reunions in Rebels when Ahsoka faced Anakin in Season 2's Twilight of the Apprentice.
Yep.
Anakin, I won't leave you. Not this time.
Then you will die.
That moment mixed Matt Lanter's voice with James Earl Jones' voice, and of course the other side of Vader's helmet was ripped open. I just love the symbolism of this, how it parallels the exposed eye imagery on all the posters. Obi-Wan in one of Vader's eyes, Ahsoka in the other, the two Jedi his gaze is forever fixed upon. Each of them only half unmasked Vader, and not until Luke will Vader be fully unmasked in Return of the Jedi.
And even if they both, if you overlap those, it still could not fully free him from that mask. Like, he's still like 3/4 of the way covered in it. Luke is the only one to fully remove it, like he's showing now. But it's just like my first thought was, oh, that parallel. It's like the other side. Like my initial thought was like, maybe if Ahsoka and Obi-Wan found each other and they both confronted Anakin together, maybe they could get through. But I think just visually, with the amount they're able to chip away from the helmet, it still wouldn't have been enough. And it just leaves everything on Luke's shoulders.
When he is redeemed, Obi-Wan apologizes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Anakin.
Man,
Notice the blue
his
glow
performance.
lights his face here, and for a moment that same blue lights Anakin's face too.
You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
And it shifts to red.
The same way.
Oh, so beautifully done, man.
Throughout this, it's mostly Hayden's voice, but the re-speecher James Earl Jones' voice does kick in for Obi-Wan. And while it seems like Anakin for a moment is forgiving Obi-Wan as the blue light remains on his face, when Vader reveals it was he who killed Anakin, that blue light fades from Obi-Wan's face and is replaced with the color red, and then we cut back to Vader's face.
Showing Vader taking over. While the blue was there, while it was the Anakin shining through, he gives a moment, gives a chance. I don't know if this was intentional or not. He gives Obi-Wan peace in that moment before Vader switches Anakin off.
And it is bleeding red. It's just such a cool way of showing the shift in identities between Anakin and Vader, and this provides Obi-Wan with that certain point of view cover story that he tells Luke in A New Hope.
A young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil, helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights. He betrayed and murdered your father.
Yeah, that's not a lie that Obi-Wan invented to spare Luke's feelings. It is really the most emotionally true explanation of what happened here, and it came directly from Vader himself. Obi-Wan says,
Then my friend is truly dead. Goodbye, Darth.
yeah, a little syntax echo of Luke in Return of the Jedi.
Then my father is truly dead.
Yep.
And finally accepting Vader's new identity, he calls him Darth, setting up their famous exchange on the Death Star.
When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Only a master of evil, Darth.
As Obi-Wan leaves him behind, Vader screams,
Obi-Wan!
Dude, I think this one might top. I don't know, man. I think that one might top the Kenobi scream
the
from
reason it glowed
Maul.
red is because he was raising his lightsaber, not to attack, but to use that light to show all of the scarring that Obi-Wan left on his face. The scream here, again, the audio mixing is incredible, including both Hayden screaming and the re-speecher James Earl Jones screaming, and of course reminding us of Sam Witwer's epic scream as Maul in Rebels.
Kenobi!
Both are so good, man.
Reva searches for Luke through a canyon. I'm assuming this is Beggar's Canyon that has come up a lot. Reva pulls Luke off the rock ledge, and as she approaches, she instead suddenly sees her own young self lying in that sand. And she flashes among memories to the night of Order 66 and her recent duel with Vader on Mapuzo. We get this quick new close-up of Anakin, a look of pain and uncertainty right before he struck her that night, as if only now Reva is thinking back on that split second of doubt when Anakin could have made a different choice. But then we see Anakin's eyes harden and he shakes the doubt out of his mind, and Reva realizes that she does not have that same evil in her heart that Anakin had in that moment. I honestly think it was the sight of Luke and his physical resemblance to his father, and how Luke represents the goodness that was once in Anakin, and that was what inspired Reva to make a different choice. After returning Luke, she sobs to Obi-Wan.
I couldn't do it. I failed him.
You haven't failed them by showing mercy. You have given them peace. You have honored them.
This may give us some insight into why Obi-Wan did not finish off Vader before, because by showing mercy, he honors the victims and shows his enemy another path. But you know, hey, Reva, if you really want to honor your friends who died in Order 66, you could start by getting that one youngling's corpse out of the amber, give him an ocean burial on Nur. I mean, it's a start. Reva tosses her lightsaber in the sand, relinquishing her mission like all the other Jedi who gave up their lightsabers on the path, and replacing the 2 Jedi blades buried in the sand at the beginning of the season with a double-ended blade back in the sand. On to Mustafar, where an aerial shot shows Vader's 2-pronged castle truly does function as a dam for lava rivers. I love the design that Doug Chiang's team put into this in Rogue One.
It's so good.
This is a literal dam for lava. Like how in our world, dams often serve as hydroelectric stations generating energy. In this case, it's a dam of the lava with a tuning fork design, harnessing and channeling dark side energy, fueling Vader's rage the longer he sits there. Vader communes with the Emperor, Ian McDiarmid making a cameo.
I wonder if your thoughts are clear on this, Lord Vader. Perhaps your feelings for your old master have left you weakened. If your past cannot be overcome.
Yeah, I like how Ian McDiarmid's eyes go from a judging squint to a more threatening glare, and he leaves that sentence unfinished, letting Vader fill in the blank mentally. The subtext, of course, is, according to the
sterns
Sith Rule
up
2, all of the dark
after
side
that,
apprentices'
his
feelings,
resolve.
hatred included, must be focused on their master. Palpatine is implying that even Vader hating Obi-Wan amounts to an emotional betrayal, and Vader, knowing that the Grand Inquisitor is waiting in the wings, does not want to be replaced. Our final shot of Vader brings back John Williams' amazing Imperial March, and the camera pulls back from him on his throne room with the red windows,
he's Vader,
the steps evoking
truly.
the appearance of Vader's mask, the steps being his breathing grill, the windows his eyes, now angled downward, making him look angrier than ever. On Alderaan, Leia now dresses herself, a contrast to the Episode 1 images of handmaidens dressing the girl we thought was Leia. She has an intricate braid, a precursor to the one she has in A New Hope. She wears Tala's holster, and Breya approves. Leia's look here with the boots reflects her action fit that we saw in the Age of Rebellion comics. Obi-Wan returns with Lola, and Bail Organa says,
I fear for her future. The Empire grows stronger and bolder.
Well, if you ever need my help again, you know where to find me.
Yeah, we feel echoes of the doomed fates of Alderaan and Bail Organa in A New Hope, but until then, we will have Andor, where Bail may make an appearance alongside Senator Mon Mothma as they both work to covertly subvert the Empire diplomatically. Obi-Wan tells Leia,
You are wise, discerning, kind-hearted. These are qualities that came from your mother, but you're also passionate and fearless, forthright. And these are gifts from your father. Both were exceptional people who bore an exceptional daughter.
I'm not crying. All of us are crying. Yes, that is John Williams' Leia theme there, and it's beautiful. Obi-Wan, of course, paying tribute to Padme and Anakin, and how their best qualities do live on in their children. Back home at Puzo, Obi-Wan said that he wished he could have been Leia's dad, and now with these words, he's realizing he doesn't need to be, because he continues to say,
I wish I could tell you more.
It's okay. You don't have to.
Yeah, just her look at Bail and Breya already moving on. Leia signals that these two are the only parents she needs. She asks,
Will I ever see you again?
reminding us of Anakin with Shmi in Phantom Menace.
Will I ever see you again?
And with Anakin and Shmi, the next time he did see her, she was dying. As the next time
Same
Leia
time.
will see Obi-Wan,
Yeah.
unless Lucasfilm decides to sandwich even more lore in here, will be Leia's eyeline connecting with Obi-Wan briefly on the Death Star, the moment of his death in A New Hope. Obi-Wan says,
Goodbye, princess. May the Force be with you.
Also to that moment, this whole thing, this whole series makes that scene for me way stronger, because just looking over, seeing the two children he really worked hard to protect and made it his mission to make sure they got to grow up, finally being together, like he was at peace. And I think that's what gave him the resolve to know that his job is done, his mission is done. It's time for the next step of that. It's time for them to take this charge, because they're ready, and he believes in Luke, he believes in Leia and what they can accomplish together, and just lets him get stricken down, man, to become one with the Force. I don't know. You can. There's like even more like joy, pain, sorrow, love that you can see in that performance now. That I don't know, man. I just think the show did a really good job at accenting and adding a lot of strong context for things that happen in the OT.
And of course, John Williams.
And that's
Force
one of
theme
them for me.
returns there. Back on Tatooine, Obi-Wan packs up his stuff into saddlebags and a crate. Remember, Anakin's lightsaber is stored among this stuff, waiting to be handed off to Luke years from now. Compared to his wardrobe in Episode 1, Obi-Wan now wears brighter robes. And with those goggles, his look is now straight out of the 2015 Jason Aaron Mike Mayhew Star Wars number 15, with Obi-Wan on the cover, which is set in the years after this. Obi-Wan finds that old T-16 Skyhopper toy that he tried to give to Luke before Owen threw back at him. So he rides his Obi back to the homestead and tells Owen that it is okay for Luke to stay a kid. You don't need to train a kid to be a Jedi. It only leads to bad things. Obi-Wan says,
"The future will take care of itself."
And Owen lets Obi-Wan finally meet Luke face to face. He gives him the T-16 that Luke will play with in A New Hope, and he says the line.
Hello there.
And Luke, how do we respond?
Hello there.
And in the final scene, Obi-Wan rides on a mirage that manifests as the Force ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn, Liam Neeson returning to cameo. Kind of like Rey spotting Luke and Leia's Force ghosts in The Rise of Skywalker in these same desert winds, it is implied to be a mirage in the mind of the perceiver. But does that make that any less real ultimately? I just love that anytime the Tatooine locals saw crazy old Ben Kenobi talking to himself, he was probably just talking to Qui-Gon's ghost. He says,
"Well, took you long enough.
Beginning to think you'd never come.
I was always here, Obi-Wan. You just were not ready to see. Come on, you've got a ways to go."
Yeah, Obi-Wan taunts his master the same way Anakin taunted him in their memory.
Was beginning to think you weren't coming.
Now notice that Qui-Gon's lightsaber is not visible under his robes. Our man always kept it tucked away under the robes, and Anakin, really only from his low vantage point, was able to see it briefly in Phantom Menace. And even after that, Qui-Gon played coy about even having a lightsaber. Throughout these 6 episodes, Obi-Wan has always been praying to Qui-Gon's ghost in hopes of communing with him, as Yoda promised they would at the end of Revenge of the Sith, but Obi-Wan has only been met with silence. But that silence was actually just deafness and blindness to what was always there. As Quinlan Voss's quote read, "Only when the eyes are closed can you truly see the way." Obi-Wan needed to close his eyes to his haunting past, let the past die, kill it if you have to, including all of his memories with Anakin, and instead focus on the living Force, as Qui-Gon counseled him in the opening exchange of Phantom Menace.
Don't center on your anxieties, Obi-Wan. Keep your concentration here and now where it belongs.
But Master Yoda said I should be mindful of the future.
But not at the expense of the moment. Be mindful of the living Force, young Padawan.
I noticed the imagery here focuses on footprints in the sand, evoking the classic Christian footprints in the sand metaphor. One set of footprints because it was in those times I was carrying you. Obi-Wan began this series divorced from the Force, and every time his thoughts brought him back in sync with Vader, their shared memory last episode, that, I believe, was truly Qui-Gon Jinn playing Force matchmaker to reacquaint Obi-Wan with the living Force. Thank you so much for joining me.
That's an interesting thought.
But if you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, you can actually see me live
all right, guys.
with Endgame's Improv every other
if you're
Saturday,
around there, go check them out, go hang out, get them tickets, get all that stuff, get the Obi-Wan shirt, follow them, subscribe. Great breakdown. Oh, there was a lot of stuff I missed, but to be fair, there's a couple, there's some things I feel like I kind of contributed to the conversation as well. Yeah, man, I love their breakdowns, dude. So many little details, so many homages, so many just beautiful moments in it. I really, really enjoyed the finale. Like, there was only like 2 things that was a minor nitpick for me, but I really liked it. I like how they resolved Reva's story. I actually like what they did with her, though I do wish that it was a more gradual transition throughout the season, because it did kind of feel a little stark in the last 2 episodes. That is one critique that I definitely do have, that I feel like it should have been a little paced a little better in the earlier part for her character, just to kind of know where she's coming from. There's subtle cues here and there, but I don't know. I would have liked to have gotten a little bit more of a vibe on her early on, but I really, everything else in it, I thought was handled really well. But guys, what did you think of this breakdown? Were there any Easter eggs that you guys caught that were missed here that I didn't bring up, that Eric didn't bring up? Sound off the comments. I'd love to know what you guys found. I'd love to know your thoughts on the episode as well. Sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. Feel free to join our Discord. Links to that and all my socials down below. Follow me in each and every one of those. I really appreciate it. Check out my reaction if you haven't already. Check out their channel if you haven't already. Before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends: Manny Sherritt, Jason Coleman, Philly Vane, Yorick Coruscant, Margaret Grace, Mary Bradley, Melita, Robert Anguiano, and Cal Kestis Nation. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. But that's it for this episode, guys, and well, hope you stick around. We got plenty more coming your way. Stranger Things. I'm gearing up for The Boys later tonight. DC stuff, Marvel stuff, and obviously Bad Batch. I think that's the next Star Wars thing that's coming out. So I'll see you guys for that one as well. But in the meantime, may the Force be with you always. Take care, everybody.